Are property managers a good choice for you? Today I wanted to dive into a little bit about what property managers do, whether it's valuable for you or maybe you want to self-manage. I'm also going to be diving into everything that you need to do to set up a property and to keep it going well. So stick around for this video and we're going to dive into it. Okay, so the very first thing that we do with a property is the onboarding, right? And the initial listing setup. When you're onboarding a property, the very first thing you want to do is make sure you set up your business license and understand your taxes in your area. Here in South Carolina and Myrtle Beach specifically, we have to get a business license with the city. If you're just using us as a property manager, you would simply fall under us. There's not really anything you have to do. But when we look at the taxes side of it, there are 3 different entities that we have to pay. It's important for us to know this because we want to make sure we charge the guest for it. Here, for example, we have to pay the city, the county, and the state. So we know exactly what percentage we have to charge for taxes, and we know we got to include that in the listing. That's a very first crucial step to this. The next thing you want to do is your listing setup, right? This is when you're going to get professional photography done. It's a really good idea, even if you own the property yourself and you're self-managing, it's still a great idea to inventory the property. And what we like to do is what we call our initial inspection. This is where we're just going in, we're kind of getting an idea for the place, catching things like the Wi-Fi, right? Obviously door lock code. That's another thing you're gonna have to do is set up a door lock. It's something to keep in mind. And then just taking down different things like the appliance model numbers, how you access cable on the TV, anything that you can think of, and we have a very long checklist, but anything you can think of that a guest might have a question on, you kind of want to do an initial inspection and record all that information, because I guarantee you down the road, a question is going to come up that you need to answer for a guest, and it should be on your initial inspection. When it comes to photography, you want to hire a professional photographer, right? We're in a very competitive market here in Myrtle Beach, so professional photography is an absolute must. We have a great crew that comes and gets amazing pictures for us, great angles. They can even do video, drone, kind of layouts if you need it. And I really think those things kind of help your listing. I know they help your listing. So that's a crucial thing for us. I also think it gives guests a good feeling when they're looking at your listing because they know they're going to a property that feels professional. When you just have sort of iPhone photos, it kind of seems homemade and just doesn't really get a good feeling across to guests that are looking at it. The next important thing to consider is software, what we call property management software. This is a software that you're essentially going to use to connect your listings to all the different channels, manage all the messaging in one spot, manage all the financial reservation data in one spot. These are really powerful tools and I would highly recommend it. We have one of the best tools on the market that we use. It's called Track PMS. Doesn't make sense to use if you're just managing a single property, but I would still recommend looking at some others like Hostaway, Hostfully, OwnerRez, Guesty. There's quite a few out there. There's a good amount to choose from, but this is a really good idea to do, like I said, to really distribute your properties across multiple platforms. When it comes to the marketing, and we'll get into that to a little bit, you do want to have a diversified approach. You want to be on as many as possible, not just Airbnb. And these tools do a really good job of distributing, but also making sure you don't get double bookings, right? So you're going to be on many platforms. They have to be talking to each other constantly. Otherwise, you could be in danger of getting a double booking, which is not fun to deal with, especially on a holiday or a busy weekend. Once you're done with your listing setup and your photography, you got your door lock, all that stuff's getting ready and you're moving forward. One of the things you can start with, you can also start with this early. Usually we do this after we have all the photos and our inspection so we get an idea of the place. But pricing is a super important thing, right? You want to set your pricing up a year in advance. You might have somebody, it's unlikely, but you might have somebody that books really far in advance and there's no reason you shouldn't be taking advantage of those bookings. So setting up your pricing is crucial. We kind of take a common sense approach to it, I guess. We're looking at comparable listings and you can find these comparable listings by going on Airbnb, by going on Vrbo, by going on the platforms that are out there and filtering down filters that match with yours, right? And that will show you kind of the similar properties in your area and then just go through their calendar, select some different dates, see what they're pricing it at per night and set it up accordingly. It could also be a good idea to pull up some events and popular holidays throughout the year in your town or your city and just make sure that you elevate prices on those. We like to use dynamic pricing, so our pricing fluctuates throughout the year. I think that's the best way to really maximize your pricing is to do that. But I've seen people do fine as well, just doing more seasonal prices and kind of maximizing it on the weekends and also increasing it on those holidays or those events. The final step to onboarding is building a reliable team. At My Beach Vacation Rentals, we got some really good vendor partners. And when I say team, I really talk about everybody, right? Not only your property manager, but your cleaners, your handymen, your contractor in the more professional trades like HVAC and plumbing, electrical. You really want to assemble a deep team for all these, particularly cleaning, so that if you do run into issues, or should I say when you run into issues, you're covered on multiple levels, right? If your first guy doesn't work, you're your second guy. If your second guy doesn't work, you go to your third guy. I would say a safe bet is to have 3 deep in all those categories, and I think that'll really help ensure you don't have headaches. But again, you are going to run into problems. You want to make sure you have great people on the ground, especially if you're managing it from afar. Or if you are using a property manager, just ask them and make sure they're covered. Like I said, we rely on our vendors very heavily. I think it's super important, and they do a great job for us. After onboarding and setup, one of the most crucial things to any business, and I like to think about short-term rentals as its own little mini hotel or mini business, if you will. One of those most crucial aspects to it is marketing, right? You want to be able to market the heck out of this property. That's how you're going to get guests in the doors. That's how you're going to make revenue, get good reviews, and keep it going, right? So when it comes to marketing, we really like to take a sort of diversified approach. We like to be on as many channels as possible, but we've also found that there are certain channels that just do way better for us than the others. Some of those channels for us are Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. We're also on others like Hopper and Wimstay and Google Vacation Rentals. And there's a few others out there that you can get on there. There's probably about 15 to 20 when you really look at it that you could get out on. But for us, we get 90% of our bookings through the 3 channels of Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. So we do try to, like I said, going back to the PMS, that's where you can distribute onto a lot of stuff. But when it comes to the channels, we really try to focus on doing well on those 3 platforms. It is super competitive out there. You can spend all day long kind of tweaking your listing and trying to perfect it. And all the different platforms kind of advertise and put different aspects of the listing in different places. So there is kind of an art form to tweaking each one of them. But I will say you want to figure out what works best in your market and just make sure you maximize your effort and your optimization, ranking high on those platforms as much as possible. The other aspect of marketing that people don't really consider is the pricing aspect. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we like to use sort of a dynamic pricing tool. This basically just means that our pricing fluctuates throughout the year. On Tuesday, it could be $200, and on Wednesday, it could be $231, right? And really the idea with dynamic pricing, and it kind of started with the airline industry, the idea with it is that there's certain times when people are more likely to book, and there's also certain days that are more demand than other days. So it's really, these tools have done a great job out there, such as Price Labs, there's Wheelhouse, there's some other tools, but these pricing tools do a great job in helping you price your full calendar. Obviously, it would be a very tedious task to update each individual day every day, and from the get-go, figure out what your pricing is going to be for 365 days in advance. That would be a very tedious task, but these pricing tools really help us. Beyond the pricing tools, I will say you do have to have a weekly at the minimum sort of approach on these things. We look at our pricing weekly. We're implementing different discounts, promos all the time just to make sure we're staying competitive. And I also think the channels like to see that you're on top of pricing and doing different things to encourage guests to book. So I think it helps you boost on the channels as well. But pricing is a super crucial thing. I would say a good strategy when you're starting out is when you go and find those comparable listings, keep those links either bookmarked or maybe keep them on a Google Doc so that you can go back to them down the road, maybe once a month or so, and just see how they're pricing, right? And see how they're booking ahead. If someone's calendar is completely empty and you're looking at their pricing, it probably means their pricing's too high. If someone's calendar is like pretty booked up, it could mean they're too low. So I would keep those comparable units so you can always come back to them and look at them in the future. But definitely pricing is one of the most important things on the marketing side of things. Guest services. Guest services is probably my least favorite part, if I'm being honest, but it is a crucial part. Communication is a crucial part with guests. Outside of cleaning, it seems like communication tends to be the second most crucial factor in our view. So having great guest service is super important. I will say too, I notice with self-managers a lot, they don't really do a great job in this respect. When it comes to the guests, this is the hospitality industry, right? Our goal is to take care of guests in the highest regard. You want to take care of them as if they're staying in a hotel, right? So we take guest service really seriously. At My Beach, we have 24/7 guest support, which I think is awesome. I think doing it on your own, probably the biggest headache is that you can never turn it off if there's a reservation, right? You can't just say, all right, for the next 10 hours, I'm just gonna ignore my phone, because an emergency could pop up. Especially on these platforms now, you have instances where there's times where Airbnb will force you to respond within an hour, or they'll refund the guest without even asking you. So having this sort of constant support is super crucial. Beyond that, I think one thing that people don't do enough of too is trying to really figure out why their guest is staying with them and figure out ways to maximize their experience. When a guest books with us, we like to ask them why they're coming to town, just to see if there's something we can recommend, but we can also see if there's some data we can collect on that to market back to them in the future, right? If they're coming for an event that maybe we're not aware of, now we know about it and we can push that event in our newsletters, right? And like I said, it also kind of puts you in good graces with guests. If you recommend like a restaurant, maybe they're coming into town for a wedding and they need a big venue or a big restaurant to go to, that's a great opportunity for you to hop in, recommend a great venue, and then bang, that may lead to a 5-star review. You may have locked it in. So great guest service is super important. There's also you're gonna have issues, right, when guests come and stay. There's a sort of conflict resolution that you got to have in your arsenal, and that's one thing we take care of, obviously, is when an issue comes up, we try to communicate quickly and effectively with guests to make sure that whatever issue they're having, we get it resolved as quickly as possible so that they can just relax and enjoy the rest of their vacation. We really don't want to get in their way. We kind of want to elevate their experience if we can, and then for the most part, just make sure they have a great time. That's really what it comes down to on the guest service side of things. Cleaning and maintenance coordination, that's kind of the next step of this. Cleaning is so important. Like I said, the key points here is that we want to find best cleaners, right? We want to find a great group of cleaners. We've got probably 5 or 6 teams that we work with on all of our different properties, and they do a tremendous job. It's the biggest factor that affects your reviews. You could have the best house ever. If your cleaning stinks, then you're not going to get good reviews and your revenue is going to plummet and you're going to really struggle on the marketing side of things. So finding great cleaners is huge. Once we find great cleaners, you do have to stay on top of your great cleaners. You got to make sure they do good jobs. So we always do routine inspections, sort of quality control inspections after our cleaners go. We don't go every time after our cleaner, but we do go every 2 to 3 times just to make sure they're doing a great job, make sure there's nothing they missed. Typically, cleaners do a great job cleaning the place. Sometimes they don't do the best job identifying stuff that was broken or stolen. So that's where we can go in after and make sure that all of our homeowner stuff in a beautiful home like we're in now stays here, right? Guests do get a little, picky sometimes and will take stuff, or maybe it'll accidentally fall in their suitcase. It's our kind of job to catch these things. There's also the maintenance side of it, right? When something does break, what do you do? For us, if it's a minor issue, it's something typically we can handle in-house. If it's a bigger issue, we'll first try to troubleshoot it. We'll try to be that first responder. So ideally, we don't have to call a contractor out and pay a $100 fee for him to show up. But if we do have to get them out, obviously we're here to coordinate that. And like I said, we've got great vendor relationships, so usually we can get them out here quicker than the normal person could. The final aspect of a great property manager is the accounting side of things, right? Accounting is super important. There's so many different moving pieces, right? You got cleaning fees coming in, you got cleaning fees going out, you got your end of year tax stuff on your income, what was your gross, what stuff can you write off. A great property manager should be able to summarize all that stuff. And one, obviously they should be giving you a great owner statement each month that summarizes your income and expenses and line items each reservation, so you know how much you made and what the commission was, right? But they should also have a summary for your end of year, for your accountant. They should be giving you a 1099 form, and they should also be giving you kind of an end of year summary so you can see the gross versus the net. You can see a summary of the expenses. All that stuff is super important to have summarized at the end of the year. I know me as an individual, that would probably be one of my least favorite things to do if I was managing a property. So I think that's a really big value add if you're a homeowner client. So yeah, that kind of summarizes what goes into property management. There's a lot more details, and maybe in some of these future videos, I'll kind of dive in to each one a bit more and maybe give some more tactical advice. But really, I wanted to kind of show what property managers do or what they should be offering you. I think the biggest value for a property manager to give an owner is their time back, right? At the end of the day, none of this is necessarily rocket science, but someone has to do the work, right? And this work is time consuming. There's no really cheat code to speed up, guest communication or marketing or any of this stuff. You just have to go back to it continuously. On the marketing side, it's something you're always improving. On the pricing side, something you're always improving. On the guest messaging and guest service side of things, there's some things you can automate there and you can leverage technology, but really, there's really no shortcuts on this side of things. You're gonna run into these crazy instances where one Saturday, you're gonna have to go out to your property and fix something for your guest instead of, going to some fun event, right? It's just one of those sucky things. So I think property managers provide a great value in that part, and hopefully they give you your time back. Another thing is obviously offering sort of our local expertise. I'm from the area of Myrtle Beach. I know so much about it. I know what to recommend to guests. I know what vendors to go to. I've got a contact for just about whatever you can think of. I've got a great sense as well for the market and how tourism fluctuates around here and how prices fluctuate. So I really just think as far as local property managers go, it's hard to find a good one, but once you find a good one, they can really be the quarterback for your team. They can really provide you a ton of value. And I hope this video helps. Like I said, I'll be diving into some really cool stuff in future videos, but otherwise, like the video, comment below if there's anything you want me to specifically do in a video or talk about. I'm really an open book. I'd love to provide as much value as possible. So like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one.